Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I am sharing how to make these 5 Christmas themed mason jars. So let's get started. For this DIY, I'm making a snowman out of a Dollar Tree mason jar and some white chalk paint from Folk Art, and I'm starting by covering the jar with the paint. For the snowman's nose, I'm using this scrap piece of orange vinyl and I'm cutting it into a triangle. You could also use felt or foam or a piece of paper, anything you have on hand. I don't want the nose to be totally flush against the mason jar, so instead of peeling off the vinyl and sticking it down, I'm putting a dot of hot glue on the left side, the larger end of the nose, and sticking it that way. And now I'm hot gluing 2 black buttons to the snowman. For the snowman's eyes, I'm using a piece of black foam and I'm cutting out 2 small circles. And then I'm hot gluing the circles onto the jar. For the snowman's scarf, I'm using this candy cane striped ribbon from Dollar Tree. I realized I didn't leave enough space for the scarf, so I took off the buttons and I'll be adding those back on. But I'm wrapping the ribbon around, then tying it and hot gluing it in place onto the jar. And now it's time to add those buttons back on. For the snowman's hat, I'm using this foam Christmas tree from a previous DIY video, and I'm tracing it on this piece of black foam and cutting it out. This is a little bit wider than the mason jar lid, which I am painting black with acrylic paint. That foam piece will become the base for the hat, so you'll see how this all comes together. I'm turning the mason jar upside down onto that foam circle and tracing it, then folding the foam in half and cutting a slit in the center, then cutting around the traced circle, giving me a black ring. This foam ring fits perfectly over top of the mason jar. This will be the brim of the hat. Now I'm screwing the lid back onto the jar, and I'm hot gluing this metal piece on top. You can see some of the white of the jar is showing through in the gap there, so I'm filling it in with black acrylic paint. You could also just paint the top of the jar black to begin with. I'm touching up the top with some paint, and my mason jar snowman is complete. Isn't he cute? I love how this turned out. Today's video is part of the Dollar Tree Glassware Challenge. I am participating along with Ellie from DIY from House to Home and Amanda from 6 Kids and a Glue Gun. The 3 of us are creating DIYs using glassware items from Dollar Tree, so make sure to check out the playlist linked in my description box, and also go subscribe to their channels and let them know I sent you. For this DIY, I'm painting a Dollar Tree mason jar gold with this champagne gold color from DecoPage. This took a couple of coats to get the nice finish that I was going for. Once the paint has dried, I'm wrapping a piece of painter's tape around the jar. Then I'm covering the bottom half with decoupage glue. I have this ornament filler from Dollar Tree that is filled with gold and silver stars and glitter, and I'm sprinkling it all over the bottom part of the jar where the glue is. And it was right about this time I was questioning if this was a good idea or not, because a lot of it seemed to be falling off and not sticking super well, and I wasn't sure if the stars were too big for this project. But I kept going, kept sprinkling and placing some of the stars manually, but it actually does turn out really cute and does work, so stick with me here. But I'm covering as much of the bottom part of the jar as possible with all of the glitter and stars. Then I'm going over top of all of it with another layer of decoupage glue. This is really what is going to keep all of this in place and not having glitter falling everywhere, and especially keeping those larger stars in place. It's super important to put a nice layer of glue all over top of this. And the one I'm using is a glossy finish, so that is going to help with the nice sheen once all of it dries. You can see here it's giving a little bit of glossy, and it has a little bit of a sparkle to it with all of the glitter and the stars. So now it's time to take off the painter's tape. And again, I had a little bit of issue with this. It was taking off some of the paint along with it, but I just kept going, and then I'll touch up those bits with some more of the gold paint. And it's going to take a couple of layers to really cover up those holes, but it does work out. Now I'm going into Cricut Design Space to create a Merry Christmas decal. I found this SVG online, so I'm uploading it into Design Space. And I wasn't a big fan of these little stars that are around the design here, so I'm first resizing the image down to 2.5 inches wide to fit on my mason jar. Then I'm zooming it in here just to see better, and I'm manually deleting these little star designs just by clicking on all of them on the right hand side there, then pressing the delete button. Now instead, I'm going over to the sidebar here for where the shapes are and selecting the star, and I'm making it much smaller and dragging it over to the design. And if you hover over in the corner there, you can see kind of a rounded arrow, and that is how you rotate the images. So I'm duplicating this and adding stars to the other side and doing the same rotating method by hovering on the outer corner and then dragging it around. And I'm continuing this by adding a bunch of little stars all over the design. Now I'm selecting the whole design and clicking on attach to make everything the same color. It doesn't matter what color it's showing on here. You can select any color vinyl you want. I'm going with white, and I'm cutting it out with my Cricut. At first I tried a silver color, but I felt like it didn't really show up very well against the gold paint. So I'm going with white instead, and it's really going to pop on the gold jar. I'm using a Duck brand contact paper as my transfer tape to transfer my design onto. And I'm making sure I'm getting all of those little bits weeded out. Yes, I did lose the dot of the I in Christmas along the way, but that's okay. For these rounded projects like the jar, it really helps to stick the middle of the design down first and then work your way on either edge, pressing it down carefully, then peeling off the transfer tape. To finish off this jar, I'm adding in some greenery, a gold glittery leaf, and some white florals. And this fancy glittery silver and gold mason jar is complete. Perfect for displaying this Christmas. For this DIY, I'm using a red and white snowflake napkin from Dollar Tree, along with a mason jar and some decoupage glue. I'm peeling off the top layer of the napkin. Then I'm cutting off this white section. So I'm just left with the snowflake design and red background. I'm covering my jar with the decoupage glue by painting the whole thing. And now I'm wrapping my napkin around the jar, pressing as carefully as I can, trying to smooth it down onto the jar. But of course, it does not have to be perfect. We're just trying not to rip it too much. Just being very gentle, pressing down onto the jar. And then I'll be cutting off the excess here. I'm also using some glue on the bottom just to gather it down there. And then I'm adding another layer of the decoupage glue all over the jar, covering the entire napkin. This is what the jar looks like once the glue has dried. I have this gold glittery ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to wrap the top of the mason jar with it. I'm adding some hot glue and then wrapping the ribbon around and securing it in place. I have these wooden snowflake decorations from Dollarama, and I'm taking one of the larger ones and painting it white. And now I'm hot gluing it to the front of my mason jar. To finish it off, I'm adding some Christmassy floral picks to the jar, including some red berries, a pine cone, and greenery. And my red and white Christmassy mason jar is complete. For this DIY, I'm going into Cricut Design Space and clicking on Images, and I'm searching for a snowflake. I'm also filtering for the free images over on the left-hand side, and then scrolling through and seeing what I can find. I selected my snowflake, and now I'm going to add it to the canvas. I'm resizing it to be 2.5 inches wide. Then I'm clicking on Make It. I'm cutting out this design with my Cricut using white vinyl, but you can use any color vinyl because that part won't actually be part of our final project. I'm weeding it out, then using Duck brand contact paper as my transfer tape to transfer the design onto this mason jar. I'm using this glass paint from DecoArt in the shade light blue, and I'm covering the whole jar with it, also painting over the vinyl snowflake. This paint is pretty thin, so I'm doing several coats to cover it all. Now that the paint is all dry, I'm using my weeder tool to take off that vinyl snowflake. This part was a little bit tricky, and I was taking some of the paint along with it, even though I was trying to be careful. But I do have to go back over and touch up a couple of the areas with some paint. Next, I'm taking this silver glittery ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm wrapping it around the top of the mason jar, then hot gluing it in place. To finish off this DIY, I'm taking one of these little LED tea lights and popping it into the jar. You can see the flicker of the light shining through our peekaboo snowflake window. For this DIY, I'm painting a mason jar red with this paint from DecoArt in the shade Santa Red. I love this color. It is so festive and Christmassy, and I think it turns out really nicely on the jar. I'm going into Cricut Design Space and uploading this SVG that says a very Merry Christmas. And of course, first I'm resizing it so it fits onto the jar. I'm making it 2.5 inches wide. Then I'm selecting the whole design and clicking on Attach. And now I'm cutting out the design using white vinyl with my Cricut. After I weeded it out and transferred it onto the transfer tape, I'm pressing it onto the jar, starting with the middle and then pressing out on either side. Now I'm taking this red and white striped twine from Dollar Tree and I'm wrapping it around the top of the jar 3 times and hot gluing it in place. To finish it off, I'm adding in this Christmas pick from Dollar Tree, which is a bunch of greenery and red berries. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments which of these Christmas mason jars was your favorite. And please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel, and I appreciate your support so much. I'll see you next time.